I messaged the family chat. My son's procedure is at 7 a.m. I need someone to stay with his 6-year-old sister overnight. My mom answered, absolutely not. My brother reacted with laughing emojis. I sent one last text. That tells me enough. At 9:17 p.m., my father picked up a call. He wasn't ready for a quick thing. Most of you watching right now aren't subscribed, and that makes it tough for us to grow. One tap is all it takes, and it keeps these stories coming. Thank you so much. Now let's go. The woman who watched my daughter that night was not my mother, not my sister-in-law, not my aunt, not any of the 14 people in my family group chat. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, a 68-year-old woman who has spoken to me maybe 24 times in 4 years. She saw me loading Lily's overnight bag into the car at 10 p.m. and walked across the street in her slippers. Where are you taking her this late? She asked. I told her, my son Dylan has a procedure at 7 a.m. I need someone to watch Lily overnight. I've been calling people for 6 hours. Nobody said yes. She took the bag out of my hands. She didn't ask who I called. She didn't ask why they said no. She said, bring her to my house. I'll make her pancakes in the morning. My family couldn't be bothered. A woman who barely knows my middle name showed up in slippers. 4 p.m., 14 hours before surgery. I typed the message carefully. I wanted it to be clear. No room for confusion. My son's procedure is at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I need someone to stay with Lily overnight. She's 6. She knows all of you. Please. I sent it to the family group chat. 14 members. My mother, my father, my brother Trent, Trent's wife, 2 aunts, an uncle, 5 cousins, my sister-in-law's mother, who somehow got added to the chat 3 years ago and never left. I put the phone on the kitchen counter and went to pack Dylan's hospital bag, pajamas, his stuffed dinosaur, the blanket he likes, socks with grips on the bottom because he hates cold hospital floors. He was on the couch watching cartoons, 7 years old. He didn't know exactly what was happening tomorrow, just that there would be doctors and he'd be asleep for a while. And when he woke up, the thing that had been hurting him would stop hurting. Lily was in her room drawing, 6 years old. She knew her brother was going to the hospital. She didn't know I had no one to leave her with. I checked the phone at 4:22. My mother had already replied, "Yet absolutely not. I have my morning routine, and I can't have disruptions overnight. You'll figure something out." 40 seconds. She took 40 seconds to say no to watching her own granddaughter on the night her grandson was going into surgery. 40 seconds to decide that her yoga, her tea, her newspaper, her morning was more important than a 6-year-old girl who calls her Nana. 3 weeks ago, this same woman watched Trent's 2 kids for an entire weekend. Friday night to Sunday afternoon. She made them breakfast both mornings. She took them to the park. She posted 3 photos on Facebook. Nana's weekend with the babies? Heart emojis. Smiling faces. She wasn't busy. She wasn't protecting her routine. She was available. She just wasn't available for my children. 4:30 p.m., Trent's response came in. 3 laughing emojis. And then a text. Bro, hire a babysitter LOL. That's my brother. Everything is a joke because nothing has ever been real for him. He's never faced a crisis he couldn't laugh through, because every real crisis he's ever had was handled quietly by me. 2 years ago, he called me at midnight, drunk. Car in a ditch on Route 9. He needed a ride. I drove 40 minutes in the rain, found him sitting on the guardrail, loaded him into my car, drove him home, and put him on his couch. I didn't tell our parents. I didn't bring it up again. He said one thing that night. Not thank you. He said, don't make it weird. Now my son is going into surgery and Trent is sending laughing emojis from the same couch I carried him to. I stared at the phone. Then I watched the rest of the group chat. The typing indicators appeared. Someone was writing something. Little dots bouncing for about 5 seconds. Then they disappeared. Another set of dots. Bounced. Disappeared. Someone started to respond and stopped. Someone else opened the chat and closed it. I could see the red receipts. Every name had a blue check mark. Everyone saw it. Not one person said, that's not okay. Not one person said, I'll come. Not one person even asked what the surgery was for. 14 people, a 6-year-old girl, a 7-year-old boy going into an operating room, and silence. I typed one last message. That tells me enough. Then I closed the app. 5 p.m. I checked my father's name in the chat. Blue check mark. He'd read the message. No response. Nothing. My father lives 22 minutes from my house. I know because I've driven it dozens of times. Usually to drop off his prescriptions because he keeps forgetting to pick them up. I did that every week for a year. 52 trips to the pharmacy and 52 drives to his door. He has met Dylan twice. He has held Lily once at her first birthday for a photo, then handed her back like she was a prop he was done with. I tried to remember the last time he came to my house. Not a holiday, not a birthday, just to visit, to sit with his grandchildren, to ask how they're doing. I checked my photos. Nothing. Our text history. The last conversation was 7 weeks ago. 3 messages about a football game. My son is having surgery in 14 hours. My father lives 22 minutes away. He read the message and did nothing. 6 p.m. I started calling people individually. Maybe the group chat felt impersonal. And maybe people needed to hear my voice, hear the words come from a person instead of a screen. I called my Aunt Brenda first. She's the one who always says family comes first at Thanksgiving. She posts it on Facebook twice a year. She has a wooden sign in her kitchen that says, "Family is everything." She didn't pick up. I left a voicemail, tried to keep my voice steady, explained the situation, said I just needed someone for one night. Said Lily is easy. She goes to bed at 8:30. She sleeps through the night. Brenda texted back 20 minutes later. Just saw this. So sorry, I have early plans tomorrow. Hope everything goes well with the little guy. The little guy. She doesn't remember his name. She sees him twice a year, and she doesn't remember that his name is Dylan. She reacted to a meme in the group chat 45 minutes later. She didn't have early plans. She had a couch and a phone and a decision she'd already made before I finished leaving the voicemail. I called my cousin Nicole. She picked up. That felt like progress for about 4 seconds. I would, Marcus, but I think Trent said you were looking into babysitters. Maybe that's the easier route, Trent said. She'd already talked to Trent. Before I even called her, Trent had already framed this. Already told people that I was being dramatic instead of doing the obvious thing and hiring a babysitter. Like I'm going to hand my 6-year-old daughter to a stranger at 10 p.m. the night before her brother's surgery. Like that's the easier route. He made the narrative before I could finish making calls. That's what Trent does. He doesn't solve problems. He explains why they're not his. I called my cousin Ashley. She answered. She listened. She was quiet for a moment and I could hear her actually thinking about it. She said, and paused. Let me check with my husband and call you back. She didn't call back. I checked my phone every 15 minutes for an hour. Nothing. I called 4 more people. 3 didn't answer. 1 said she was out of town, which might have been true and might not have been. By 7 p.m., I'd called every person in my family I could think of. 8 calls, 0 yeses. Most of them didn't even ask what the surgery was for. Most of them didn't even ask how Dylan was feeling. 8 calls, and not one person said the only sentence I needed to hear, "I'll be there." 7:30 p.m. I put Dylan to bed early because the hospital wanted him fasting from midnight, and he'd be cranky if he was still awake when the hunger hit. He was lying in bed holding the stuffed dinosaur. He'd already packed it in his hospital bag, but took it out because he wanted it for one more night. The dinosaur's name is Rex. Dylan named him when he was 4. Rex has been through 2 moves, a lost and found box at school, and 1 trip through the washing machine that turned him from green to a faded gray-green. Dylan doesn't care. Rex goes where Dylan goes. "Dad, will you be there when I wake up?" "I'll be right there. I'll be the first thing you see." "Promise?" "Promise." "What about Lily?" "Lily's going to stay with someone nice tonight. She'll be fine." "Who?" I didn't have an answer yet. My 7-year-old son, the night before his surgery, Isha was asking me a question I couldn't answer. I said, "Someone who cares about her." He accepted that. He's 7. He still believes that when his dad says something, it's true. He closed his eyes. Rex went under the blanket with him. I stayed in the doorway for a while, watching him breathe, watching his fingers grip the dinosaur. thinking about 14 people who couldn't give me one night. Not money, not a favor, not a flight. One night with a 6-year-old girl who goes to bed at 8:30, sleeps through the night, and wakes up smiling. They couldn't do it, or they wouldn't. And standing in my son's doorway the night before his surgery, I realized that the difference between those two words doesn't matter when you're the one holding the bag. 8:30 p.m. Lily was in her pajamas watching a show in the living room. Dylan was asleep. The house was quiet except for cartoon voices on the TV. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and did something I'd never done before. I made 2 lists. List 1, every favor I've done for a family member in the last 5 years. I drove my mother to physical therapy twice a week for 4 months after her knee surgery. I rearranged my entire work schedule to protect her morning routine during recovery. 4 months of early mornings and late pickups. I lent Trent $3,000 for a car repair 18 months ago. He never paid it back. He never brought it up again. I picked up my father's prescriptions every week for a year. 52 trips to the pharmacy, 52 drives to his house. He never once offered to meet me halfway. I pulled Trent out of a ditch at midnight and never told a soul. And I watched Nicole's kids 3 weekends in a row last summer so she could handle a work project. I drove 2 hours each way to fix Brenda's leaking sink because she didn't trust plumbers. I took a week off work when my grandmother was dying, drove 4 hours with both kids in the car, sat with her every day until the end, handled the funeral arrangements, paid for half the burial. My mother sent flowers. Trent posted a black and white photo with the caption, "Rest easy, Grandma." My father didn't come. 23 favors. I counted them on my phone screen. 23 times in 5 years I showed up, drove, paid, fixed, carried, covered, or sat with someone in my family when they needed something. Then I made list 2, every family member who said yes tonight. I stared at the screen. The list was empty. 23 on one side, and 0 on the other. I looked at both lists for a long time, side by side. One that scrolled, one that didn't exist. Something shifted. Not anger exactly. Not sadness. Clarity. The kind of clarity that arrives when you finally see a pattern you've been standing too close to for years. I wasn't unlucky tonight. I was seeing the truth for the first time without the filter of loyalty blurring the edges. I closed the lists, opened Lily's closet, started packing her overnight bag. 9 p.m., I packed her bag. Pajamas, toothbrush, her stuffed rabbit, a change of clothes for the morning. I zipped it and stood in the hallway, trying to think of anyone I hadn't called. There was nobody. At 10 p.m., I loaded the bag into the car. Lily was on my hip, half asleep, head on my shoulder. I stood in the driveway with no plan. Then a porch light turned on across the street. Mrs. Patterson walked out of her front door in her slippers. She'd seen me through her window. She crossed the street the way she always moves, slowly, carefully, but with purpose. "Where are you taking her this late?" I told her. All of it. The surgery, the group chat, the refusals, the laughing emojis, the 8 phone calls. I told her more than I planned to because her face was the first face all day that looked like it was actually listening. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say, "That's terrible," or "I'm so sorry." She didn't give advice. She reached over and took the bag out of my hands. "Bring her to my house," she said. "I'll make her pancakes in the morning. You go take care of your boy." I looked at this woman, this neighbor I'd waved to maybe 100 times over 4 years. Why, she'd watched me from across the street day after day. She'd seen me carry groceries alone. She'd seen me mow the lawn at 9 p.m. because it's the only free hour I have. She'd seen me load 2 kids into car seats every morning at 6:45 and unload them every evening at 6:30. Alone, every single time. She'd seen Dylan learning to ride a bike in the driveway while I ran behind him. She'd seen Lily sitting on the front steps waiting for me to come home from work. She'd seen me shovel the driveway at 5 a.m. so I could get to a shift on time. And in 4 years of watching, she had never once seen a family member pull into my driveway. Not to help, not to visit, not to sit with the kids so I could take a breath. Not once. She didn't say any of that. She didn't need to. She just held the bag and waited. I carried Lily across the street. She woke up a little when I set her on Mrs. Patterson's couch. She looked around, confused. Mrs. Patterson handed her a blanket and said, You're having a sleepover at my house tonight, sweetheart. We're going to have pancakes in the morning. Lily looked at me. I nodded. She pulled the blanket up and closed her eyes. I walked back to my house, sat in my car in the driveway, put my forehead on the steering wheel. For about 90 seconds, I let something crack. Not a breakdown, just a fracture. The kind that happens when you've been holding something rigid for too long and your body finally says, enough. Then I picked up my phone. 9:17 p.m. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Trent. I didn't call my father. I called Uncle Frank. Frank is my father's older brother, lives 3 hours away. He's the one person in the extended family that my father respects, not loves, respects. The kind of respect that comes from knowing someone can see through you and choosing not to say it out loud. Until now. Frank picked up on the second ring. Marcus, everything okay? I told him everything. The surgery tomorrow morning, the group chat message, my mother's 40-second refusal, Trent's laughing emojis, my father's silence, the 14 people who read it and chose nothing, the 8 calls, the 0 yeses. Mrs. Patterson in her slippers taking my daughter's bag at 10 p.m. on a weeknight. Frank listened without interrupting. 2 full minutes. When I finished, the line went quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "Send me the screenshot." I opened the group chat. Screenshot. My message at the top. When my mother's absolutely not. Trent's laughing emojis. 14 red receipts. The silence. I sent it. He said, "I'll handle this." At 9:17 p.m., Frank called my father. I don't know exactly what was said. The call lasted 4 minutes. But whatever Frank said in those 4 minutes hit a nerve my father had been protecting for years. Because at 9:30 my phone started ringing. My father. For the first time in months. I didn't pick up. My mother. Twice in a row. I didn't pick up. Trent. 3 times. I didn't pick up. Not because I was punishing them. Because I had nothing to say. Lily was safe at Mrs. Patterson's house. Dylan was asleep with his dinosaur. I had to be at the hospital in 7 hours. The people calling me had their chance 6 hours ago. They chose laughing emojis and morning routines in silence. I turned the phone off, set my alarm for 4:30 a.m., went to sleep. What I didn't know until the next day is that Frank didn't just call my father. He took the screenshot and forwarded it to the wider family group. 41 people. Uncles, aunts, cousins from 3 cities. People who weren't in my group chat. People who had no idea, no commentary, no emotional speech, just the image. My message at the top. My mother's absolutely not. Trent's laughing emojis. 14 red receipts. 0 offers. By midnight, replies were coming in from relatives I hadn't talked to in years. Is this real? She said that about her own grandson's surgery night? Trent thinks this is funny? Who is watching the little girl right now? An older cousin in another state typed, "If I lived closer, I would have been there in 20 minutes. This is shameful." Frank's wife, my Aunt Carol, posted one line. "I've known this family for 34 years. I have never been more disappointed." Someone asked my mother directly in the chat, "Janet, is this accurate? Did you really say absolutely not?" My mother didn't respond. For the first time in any family group chat, my mother, who always has an opinion, who always has a response, who always has the last word, had nothing to say. Trent tried, he typed, "This is being taken out of context." But the screenshot was the context. His own words, his own emojis, his own LOL. There was no other way to read it. Nobody replied to Trent. The screenshot did what I never could have done with my own voice. It showed the truth without me having to explain it, defend it, or argue about it. Just the raw image of a family that failed a test they didn't know they were taking. 5 a.m. I woke up before the alarm, showered, got dressed in the dark. I went into Dylan's room. He was already half awake, lying on his side, Rex tucked under his arm. I helped him get dressed. He was quiet, not scared quiet, thinking quiet, the way kids get when they know something big is happening, but they've decided to trust the adults around them. I carried him downstairs, made him brush his teeth, even though he couldn't eat. He complained about that. "Why do I have to brush if I can't even have cereal?" I said. Because the doctors don't want to smell your morning breath. He laughed. Small victory. We drove to the hospital in the dark. Streets empty. Traffic lights blinking yellow. Dylan sat in the back with Rex on his lap, staring out the window. At one point he said, "Dad, is it going to hurt?" I said, "Yeah, you'll be asleep the whole time. When you wake up, it'll already be done." He nodded, went back to the window. At the hospital, a nurse handed me an intake form. Standard questions, insurance, allergies, medications, and then one section, emergency contacts. I stared at that section for a while. There used to be 3 names on this form: my mother's number, Trent's number, my father's number. 3 people who were supposed to be the safety net. 3 people who, if something happened to me while my son was in surgery, would come get my daughter and make sure she was safe. I crossed out all 3 names. I wrote Mrs. Patterson and her phone number. The nurse looked at the form. "And family?" "That is my family," I said. She looked at me for a second. Then she nodded and moved on to the next page. She didn't push. Nurses have seen enough to know when a sentence means more than it sounds like. 7 a.m. They took Dylan back. A nurse knelt down and talked to him in a calm, warm voice. She told him Rex could come too. Dylan looked at me. I nodded. She held out her hand. He took it. They walked toward the double doors together, Dylan in his hospital gown and grip socks, Rex under his arm, the nurse guiding him by the shoulder. At the doors, he looked back at me. I gave him a thumbs up. He gave me one back. Then he turned around, walked through the doors, and they closed behind him. I stood there for a few seconds looking at the closed doors. Then I sat down in the waiting room. The room was mostly empty that early. A couple across from me, holding hands, not talking. An older woman reading a book with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. A man in work clothes with his head back against the wall, eyes closed, arms crossed. I sat down, put my hands on my knees, took a breath. My phone was in my pocket. 19 missed calls from last night. I didn't check any of them. Whatever those calls had to say, they were about 12 hours too late. The couple across from me had a whole family with them. I could see through the glass doors into the hallway. 2 more adults with coffee cups, a teenager on her phone, a kid coloring in a book on the floor. 5 people showed up to sit in a waiting room for someone they loved. I had a phone full of missed calls and an empty chair next to me. At 7:15, a text came through from Mrs. Patterson, a photo. Lily sitting at Mrs. Patterson's kitchen table, pancakes in front of her. Real ones, not the frozen kind. Syrup on her chin, and laughing at something off camera. She was wearing the pajamas I'd packed, and her hair was messy, and she was holding a fork like a weapon the way she always does when she's excited about food. Below the photo, one line, "She's doing great. Focus on your boy." I looked at that photo in the waiting room for a long time. My daughter, safe, fed, happy, sitting in a neighbor's kitchen on a weekday morning because that neighbor crossed the street in her slippers and did what 14 family members, 8 phone calls, and 40 seconds of my mother's time could not. For the first time in 18 hours, my chest loosened. Something that had been wound tight since 4:22 yesterday afternoon finally released, just a little, just enough to breathe normally. I saved the photo, put the phone away, leaned back in the chair, and waited for my son. Dylan came out of surgery at 10:40 a.m. The doctor said everything went well. He'd be groggy for a few hours. He'd need rest, but he was going to be fine. I picked up Lily from Mrs. Patterson's house that afternoon. She ran to the car holding a drawing she'd made at Mrs. Patterson's kitchen table. "Mrs. P taught me to draw a cat," she said. Mrs. Patterson stood in the doorway and watched her go. She waved, I waved back. No big speech, no dramatic moment. Just a wave between 2 people who understood what had happened without needing to name it. That evening, I checked my phone properly for the first time. 19 missed calls, 47 texts. My mother. "Marcus, Frank called your father. I don't know what you told him, but this has gotten out of hand. You need to call me." My mother again, 2 hours later. People are messaging me. 8 relatives I haven't spoken to in years are messaging me because of that screenshot. How could you do this to your own mother? How could I do this? Not how could she refuse. Not how could she say absolutely not to her granddaughter. How could I share the truth about what she said? That was her problem. Not the refusal, the exposure. Trent, look, bro, I didn't realize it was that serious. You could have explained better. I read that one twice. I typed back, I said my son is having a procedure at 7 a.m. I asked you to watch his 6-year-old sister. What part needed more explaining? He didn't respond. Not that day, not the day after. I imagine he typed a few things and deleted them, the way the people in the group chat typed and deleted the night I asked for help. Some people are only good at almost saying something. My mother again. You're blowing this out of proportion. I would have helped if you'd given me more notice. More notice. Her grandson was having surgery. I gave her 14 hours. She gave me 40 seconds. Aunt Brenda. Marcus, I feel terrible. I honestly didn't realize how serious it was. She reacted to a meme 45 minutes after my message. She knew exactly how serious it was. She just didn't want it to be her problem. Cousin Ashley, I should have called back. I'm sorry. That one I believed. But believing it didn't change what happened at 10 p.m. when I was standing in my driveway with my daughter on my hip and no plan, and the only person who moved was a 68-year-old woman in slippers who barely knows my last name. 2 days after surgery, my mother showed up at my door. She was holding a Tupperware container of soup. When she didn't apologize, she said, I brought something for Dylan. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Mrs. Patterson brought soup yesterday, I said, and the day before that. My mother stared at me. She also stayed with Lily the night you wouldn't. I took the soup, closed the door, didn't invite her in. She stood on the porch for about 30 seconds. I could see her shadow through the frosted glass. Then she turned around and left. 10 days after surgery, a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Mrs. Patterson usually texts first. I opened the door. My father was standing on the porch. No soup, no gift, no Tupperware excuse in his hands. Just him. Standing there in a jacket that looked like he'd put it on and taken it off 3 times before getting in the car. He looked older than I remembered. Not in a dramatic movie way, in the way people look older when something has been taken out of them that they didn't know was holding them up. We looked at each other for a long time. I could hear Dylan laughing at something inside the house. Lily was in the other room talking to her stuffed rabbit in the voice she uses for serious conversations. Frank called me, he said. I nodded. He stood there for another few seconds. I could see him working up to something. His mouth opened slightly. His hands moved at his sides. I'd never seen my father nervous. Absent, yes. Quiet, yes. But not nervous. Not like this. I should have, he started. He stopped. The sentence hung in the cold air between us. 5 seconds. 10. 15. I could hear a car pass on the street behind him. I could hear Mrs. Patterson's wind chimes across the road. He couldn't finish it. Not because he didn't know the words, because finishing the sentence meant saying out loud what he is. That he lives 22 minutes away from 2 grandchildren he barely knows. That his son asked for help on the worst night of his life, and he read the message and put the phone down and went back to whatever it is he does in that house alone. That a 68-year-old neighbor in slippers did in 30 seconds what he couldn't do in 7 years of being a grandfather. I waited. I gave him every chance. The sentence didn't come. Yeah, I said, you should have. I closed the door. Not hard, not with anger, with something heavier than anger. The quiet click of a lock engaging on something that used to be open. Over the next few weeks, I updated every form. School pickup authorization, my doctor's office emergency contacts, dentist records, pharmacy information, the daycare backup list. Every form that used to have my mother's name now had one name, Mrs. Patterson. Every line that used to say grandmother or brother or grandfather now said the same thing. When the school called to confirm the changes, the secretary said, we have a Mrs. Patterson listed as primary emergency contact for both children. And the relationship to the child? I said, neighbor. Pause. Just neighbor? She asked. She's enough, I said. I hung up, looked at Lily doing homework at the kitchen table, looked at Dylan on the couch recovering, watching cartoons with his dinosaur on his lap. The house was quiet. The forms were updated. The people who should have been on those forms had years to earn their place. They spent those years elsewhere. He put his neighbor's name on every emergency form. Not his mother's, not his brother's, not his father's, his neighbor's. Is that heartbreaking, or is that the most honest thing a father could do?